Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. He's Jamie Wadley, and this is Inside Exec. This is part 2 of our discussion about utilising AI in your day-to-day work environment. And Jamie's going to talk about how he controls the amount of information that the AI models that he uses learn from, and what you can do to really make your prompts, your instructions for your AI as efficient and as effective as possible.
I must admit, I do tend to share certain ideas with my version of it, and to help mitigate the information becoming available, I use a VPN, a virtual private network, on my computer, and I also have adjusted the settings within ChatGPT not to use my information in training data. I'm not too sure how effective that last element is, but it's a step in the right direction of giving you some sort of data security. But once again, you have to be careful with what you share with it, and there's ways and means to still get the answers you need without being too specific in some areas. But certainly use it as a tool to help you do what you do better, I think, is the bottom line. I call it software, and I think it's probably almost an insult to call it software, because it is far, far more than that. You know, we're dealing with applications that are essentially writing themselves now, so we really don't know how they work to any great degree, and it's running on neural networks that are effectively have trillions and trillions of nodes of thought. And you would have heard, if you're interested in this stuff, that it is just trying to work out what the next word is. But unlike a predictive text generator on our phone, it is taking into consideration trillions and trillions of parameters to work out what that next word is. And I must admit, as I think of how I speak to you guys in this sort of situation, and what I'm doing is effectively trying to think of the next word to say. So how different are we in the way we think? That's a question that we all have to answer, I think.
We touched on it very briefly in terms of the prompts that you write, which is the instruction of the information that you want it to find for you, or the activity that you want it to complete. I will say from my own experience in this most recent project that I've been doing, that I have lent on it more and more to help me work through the situation. And I'm not one who leaves it on all day, I will say. I turn it on, use it, turn it off. That's just my way with activities. But I find that the more involved, particularly when there are issues that I don't agree with, or a path I don't want to follow, that it's going down, and I'll say, no, I'm getting confused. Is there a simpler way for us to do it? And I think that's probably an important point that I'd like to make, is that you don't have to follow it word for word. You don't have to take everything it says as the answer that you should follow. And if it doesn't make sense to you in terms of the broader knowledge that you've got, either you give it a bit more knowledge so that it can rethink the answer, or you just say, as I have done in this past week, it's all getting too confusing. I'm not following it. I think it's all too complicated. Is there a simpler way? And it came up with a simpler way.
Yeah, I think that's touches on what we spoke about initially, where we try to be as specific as we can in what we want it to tell us. But once again, it will give us exactly what it thinks we're asking for. And if it does go down a path which is not quite on song with what you want, you chat to it. You tell it what you wanted and say, I appreciate this information. It's going down a path I really didn't want to pursue. Can we think of it in this way? And it will happily do that for you. And the conversations can really get quite long depending on the subject. But yeah, there's nothing up with redirecting it to get exactly what you want out of it, because once again, if you don't give it enough information to work with, it will work out for itself what it thinks you need. And to repeat the obvious, it can't read minds yet.
No comment. If we look at it in a broader sense, are we needing to improve our communication styles, particularly whether we're doing voice typing or whether we're typing it out through a keyboard? Well, I think that we have, as a generation, I shall say, become lazy about communication, about being very accurate in our communication. And we've talked about that on other podcasts, about the accurate speak. Do we need to look, as one of the things that we're looking for in terms of a workforce, do we need to look at how they are communicating, and whether there needs to be a broadening of communication skills in terms of that instruction giving?
I think that's true. And if our listeners have, how can I put it? If they've done any sort of coding or maybe worked with Excel or done anything where you need to write a macro or write some computer speak sort of thing to get a bit of software to work, this is not so different. And we call it a prompt, and it is very conversational. But in essence, what we're doing is we're programming the AI to give us a result. In this particular instance, a chatbot, we're asking it for a specific result. And the more specific that can be, the more accurate the result will be. And there are ways of doing that, or perhaps a structure that should be used. And what I might do with this podcast is might put a cheat sheet together, just a one-page PDF that has a few shortcuts on how to structure a prompt that you can modify, use or not at your discretion for when you need it. But it is very much in the old computer parlance of garbage in, garbage out. And the better you talk to it, the better it'll be. In the same breath, it is incredibly good at working out what you're saying from the most gobbledygook you would ever appreciate. I often talk to my version of the AI because I've got so much to say. I don't want to be slowed down by typing it. And I will speak to it directly and I'll get the answer I want. And when I look back over what the prompt was, it's borderline understandable at all. So it is very, very clever in understanding what we need. But once again, if you give it a good point to start from, it'll give you a better result at the end of the day, and you'll be more satisfied and probably be more efficient than you would be otherwise.
In terms of people using it and getting used to using it, would you say it's easier to have them do the talking and have the voice response, or do the typing and have the typed response?
I think it's a combination of two things. If I want something that's very specific, I will usually type it. If I'm brainstorming an idea, I'll often talk to it. And it is incredibly good conversation-wise. One thing that I think should be mentioned at this point, when you are having a conversation with AI, it uses a window essentially where our conversations and the replies get built. They have a finite limit. And I've found myself, when I've had a conversation go on too long, I've probably reached a point where it's too much for the AI to take in one gulp. And it starts to get a little bit lost in what the conversation is. So while you can go on for a very, very long time, if you find it's getting a little bit distracted or a little bit off the money, so to speak, you might well be in a situation where you've reached the size of what's known as the context window and overloaded that, and it could lead to unusual, if not erroneous type results.
In terms of, if we look at our listeners are at a level in organisations where they might have a personal assistant and they might have a team that works for them, would you see an arena where they could ease their way into using any of the AI models that are around to assist in something that they're doing?
I think the short answer is yes. And perhaps they're already using it without overtly knowing what they're doing. I use a meeting app, a thing called Otter AI, which I use to transcribe meetings that I have. And Otter AI has the capacity to transcribe the meeting as well as attach names to the people who are speaking after it's worked out with your help who belongs to what voice. And it is incredibly effective. It does make mistakes, but it's probably in the category of 95, 96% accurate or better in most instances. And with that, rather than have someone taking time in a meeting to act as meeting secretary and take minutes and what have you, it might be easier to use an AI element like this to do it automatically. And I take it one step further where I get the transcript and tell it to turn it into meeting notes and take the waffle out of it that sometimes happens at meetings and reduce it down to the salient points, and also create an action register, which I quite enjoy too. So very effective way to have a meeting recorded. So yeah. I think, the answer is yes, that you should try to start using it in some small way. And as we spoke about before, you can get incredibly powerful AIs on your desktop for free to try them. I would suggest ChatGPT is a place to start. but feel free to try the other ones and see which ones work for you the best. Perplexity is another one I'd highly recommend, and just have them on standby. If you find yourself in a position where you might need a quick bit of research, rather than pick up the phone and have an assistant do it for you, maybe you can just type in 2 or 3 lines into an OpenAI chat and have it do it in the background for you, and you could get the result you need probably in a much faster and a much more effective way than you would otherwise, while not turning someone into a machine at the other end. So yeah, definitely give it a try, and you'll probably find you'll get a lot more out of it than you would expect.
Still an element, though, of the human review of what comes out of it, same as we were talking about the meeting recording, which I think is an excellent one for our listeners to think about, because these days we all have meetings that go on, and historically we have meetings where we rely on the minutes because nobody remembers what was talked about at the meeting, or we all have a different understanding of what was talked about at the meeting, and so the minutes are the thing that tell us what actually happened. That's the true record. Minutes are a true and accurate record of what happened and what we need to do going forward. And even with those, even when it was a human person taking the minutes down, producing the minutes and handing them on, still the next meeting you had to go through the minutes to make sure that they were a true and accurate record. So we're not looking at replacing activities so much as making them more efficient or making them simpler, so that human resources can be freed up to do other things that we wouldn't normally get to. If I talk about my own experience just recently with a world competition, there was no way that I could physically and mentally have done that on my own to try and find resources, human resources that would be able to help me with it. And this is just the planning and putting the website together and taking the entries and all of the things that happen associated with that. Had I not been able to find a result through AI resourcing, I would not have done the project, because it just would have been too much, too daunting, too many things that I had to bring together to make it happen. That said, that it's coming to a close shortly, and it was time for me to think about what's the next step. Will I just do it every year and just go through the same process every year? I could do that, but that's just being like everything else. So here is an opportunity, and this is the point I want to make, is that there is opportunity for you to expand an activity or expand a project or a resource that you hadn't thought about. It's the things Ted Santos talked to us about last time, the thing you don't know, you don't know. This has given me the opportunity to think about lots of little feeder events that might happen leading up to it, which once again I could not possibly have done physically without the assistance of AI. I certainly couldn't have done it in a sense of going around all the countries in the world and having a physical competition. I can have online competitions, but it's accessing those countries, accessing the entrance, knowing what the plan is. Little simple things like the time of year for certain areas that they should have those activities, because that's when the flowers are best. That's when there's no religious or other holidays happening. That's when people will be looking for something to do because they've had a long holiday, whatever else it was. That all of those things, I didn't ask for any of those things, but it took all of those things into consideration to give me the plan for the next 12 months of what I needed to do. So it's a resource that can answer the things that you don't know without you having to find out what they are first.
That's true. I guess the two main categories of functionality that we're looking at with AI today as we speak is it has the ability to be able to take a process that is repeatable, predictable, and do that much more effectively than a human being will. And essentially, it has access to information. It's read the internet, essentially, and can harness the information that it has read to generate results for us. But it can take a mundane, boring process that we might have in our day-to-day business and do that, if set up the right way, initially with some sort of human oversight to make sure it's right, and ongoing oversight for that matter. But it can do that sort of thing much better. once again, at this time, and in the probably recent 12 months, the ability for the AI to reason is getting better and better and better. And it's essentially thinking. Whether it thinks the same way as we do or not is anyone's guess, but you can actually watch what it will do, and it reflects on what it's thought about initially and improves and can really come up with some very, very powerful ideas, as Kim has mentioned, things that you may not have thought of in the initial pass that would be incredibly useful for you. And while I was saying previously that you do have to be very specific, and I do believe that when it's a particular type of prompt, if you want to brainstorm ideas, which I also do a lot with, it is an incredible, powerful tool to do that with.
I think we have covered what we need to do in terms of the basics of introducing AI or recognising that where AI can be of use to you in your work environment. We'll leave the discussion there for this time around. If you've got questions that you would like answered, we're more than happy to set up another session where we can talk about that in more detail. And Jamie will, as he has promised to do, give you a one-sheet PDF that you can download from the website that will give you some idea of where to start with your prompts. But for now, I'm Kim Bailey, he's Jamie Wadley, and this is Inside Exec.